There we go. So close, so close. Bonjour, everyone. It is lovely to see you here this evening. As you know, my name is Dr. Krista Kostroman, and I have the privilege and pleasure of welcoming our guests this evening for quite a wonderful topic. And I'm joined by not only our own Dr. Bryce Wylde, but also Alison Myers. There you are. Hello.
Hello.
This evening, we're jumping into subjects that I think Alison's going to have a wonderful way to contribute to. And I want to pass the mic to her for a second just to introduce herself because you're new to our audience. So welcome, Alison. For our audience, Alison is a psychotherapist and she's quite dynamic in the way she does it. She doesn't just stick within mind and let's talk about things. She incorporates a lot of mind-body practices, a lot of exercise, which will explain why that's so important tonight. So as she's introducing herself, again, I really encourage, please do fill out that poll so we know who we're talking to and we can make sure we tailor this evening's conversation to you. So Alison, please welcome. Hello. Intro.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me tonight, this afternoon. On the East Coast, so evening for me.
Okay. We're bi-coastal, I think, as well. I think Bryce is in the same time zone as you, and then I'm currently in California, so just a few hours behind.
Wonderful. So in my practice, my focus is definitely cognitive health and really looking at the body as a complete unit. It is everything works together and using all the components of what we've been given with our body in order to live the healthiest, best life possible.
Hmm. Oh, I love that. I love that. And Bryce, maybe if you just want to share a little bit about yourselves for our audience as well before we jump deeper into it.
Sure. So we are psycho-neuroendocrinological beings, and of course, we hold that in highest regard here at the DNA Company. I hold that in such high regard. I took it upon myself a few years ago to write the book about the brain. If we don't take care of our brain, the rest of the body fails. In fact, I believe wholeheartedly, if we take care of our brain the best we possibly can, the body, everything, the organs, the muscles, everything falls in line. The subtitle of the book, by the way, was "What Have You Done for Your Brain Today?" And so that's resonated with folks, and I think that's the question we're asking tonight, really. And it's a deeper question because knowing your DNA and getting live analytics, for that matter, on how the brain and ultimately, therefore, the body expresses itself is what we're all about, so that we can tweak, dial up or dial down certain genomics through through intention, which I'm sure Alison will appreciate the vernacular around that, and see a longer, healthier life. Brain span, right? Not just health span, not just lifespan, but brain span.
Mhm. I like that positioning because I think it begs the question, well, sometimes people need to make more seismic or big changes to what they're doing. The question, or at least the health that it all comes out and the what are you doing, the small things that you're doing on a daily basis to support your brain. Yeah. So why don't we open maybe the conversation by speaking to, traditionally when we thought about brain health and psychology health, a lot of it was talk therapy. That's kind of been the popular thing for the past, I don't know, 100, 150 years. And lately it's really been shifting towards let's talk about, yes, let's talk about feelings, let's talk about our experience, but also we need to appreciate the body it sits in and how there's kind of this cross-conversational talk. So why don't we talk a little bit about how we got to this point and why we're at this point where we're no longer just talking about how do we keep care of this, but it's really how do we keep care of this whole body? How does that all contribute? How does that all line up? And how, yeah, anyone of my two esteemed guests here?
You
Yeah.
know, yes, you go
Yes.
ahead, Allison. You start off. I mean, if you're just as jazzed as I am about this. I feel like if I don't know about you guys, but I certainly feel like whenever there's a big story, a big topic to unpack, myself personally, I always yield back to evolutionary biology. So I'd love to share that story, but I'll first yield over to you, Allison, because I saw you like jumping in there.
I think that's an excellent place to start. So, right? Take it
Oh,
away.
you want to give it back to
Yeah,
me?
yeah, yeah,
Are we
yeah, yeah.
so wait, hold on. Are we playing tennis here or are we playing, pickleball? Pickle this is really one of those things, I swear, it's just too popular for its own good. So I will. I'll take us back because I believe starting where we kind of began helps set the stage here. So I like that our brains are this extraordinary result of millions of years of the evolutionary process. We're all familiar with, Darwinism and natural selection, but with genetics and environment essentially shaping everything from basic survival instincts to advanced cognitive functions, which we can all appreciate today. But like this thing's only existed the way it has for, more like tens or maybe hundreds of thousands of years. So but it all began in this very early sort of primordial soup, neural networks and primitive life. That set the stage for what we know as the Cambrian explosion. So fast forward now to 500 million years ago, and this extremely rapid diversification of life brought so many complex organisms to this planet, right? So pushing forward the evolution of senses, motor skills, cognitive abilities. And I know I'm fast forwarding through evolution here, but what I'm getting to is as we sort of moved life from sea to land, environmental challenges led to and stressors, or what we refer to as stressors for natural selections, led to these breakthroughs, like fire, a big one, right? Which allowed humans to cook, making nutrients more accessible. Otherwise, we're eating 10 hours a day. Look at any primate on the planet right now. That's all they do. But cooking speeds that process up. We can digest it. Anyway, so this fueled brain growth, and it supported the evolution of genes like FADS1, FADS1, and FADS2. And this gene is really important because it converts omega-3s into DHA. Now, you don't have to test for these genes, folks. You have them. And it's a crucial component of brain structure. The reason you have them, it's how we got here. So coastal diets also played, a huge role, rich in DHA. That's a really important omega-3. I call that brain juice. And it laid the groundwork for this enhanced cognitive development that we all share amongst ourselves as Homo sapiens. So fast forward again, key further genetic adaptations that accelerate brain growth and complexity, like ASPM. That's a gene that contributed to brain size, giving rise to a much greater abstract thought, creativity, strategic thinking. While RGAP 11B, one of the most important point mutations ever, by the way, which means a single gene that allowed for the curvatures, the ruga within our brain, and helped to boost neuronal production, which ultimately set up the stage for capacity for our sophisticated thought process and our abstract thought. And all these advancements kind of led to this evolution of the cerebral cortex. That's our center, right? Our stop, go in the front of our brain, which then later developed these intricate folds. So fast forward to that, genes like FOXP2, which enhanced language capability and social connection. All these genes became steps and underscores our overall ability to adapt and resilience to social engagement, problem solving, mental stimulation for growth, both physically and mentally. Anyway, these genetic pathways, they still influence how exercise, diet, lifestyle impact our brain health. So physical activity, for example, boosts BDNF. And we're going to talk about that. That's a gene that we'll discuss. One which we constantly study at the DNA company, supports neuroplasticity, helping repair and grow brain cells and so forth. So by understanding this legacy, and so thank you for allowing me to share that, ultimately we can align our fitness and our lifestyle choices to our genetic strengths and even weaknesses, which ultimately ensures that we maintain the cognitive health and resilience as we age. Right? Your genes have done the work to get you here. Now it's up to us to protect that legacy with the genes that we're studying at the DNA company.
Interesting. Yeah. So if I'm hearing you, if I'm kind of taking my proverbial time machine and going across all the time that you just jumped through, really what we're talking about is first body evolved, and then there were just a few points in time where then mind came through, but because the mind evolved within a body, you really can't pull them apart. And so when you're trying to address brain, if you're not also addressing body, which founds brain, you're not really getting anywhere. Right. Alison, do you see this? How do you see this coming through in your practice? Because I would imagine if someone when someone goes to a psychotherapist, right? They're like, cool, I'm going to sit on a couch. They're going to sit behind me with a notepad and they're going to ask me about my mother, right? They think it to be a very talk-based experience, right? How are you kind of introducing this idea that it's not just that exercise, that or omega-3s, kind of the diet, et cetera, all of that plays into how they're feeling?
Well, one of the things that Bryce brought up is the BDNF, that brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Thank you. And I'm gonna get this out.
You're at the end
And,
of your day, all the grace.
right. And the apolipoprotein. These are the two genes that we do all have, but how much we have of each of those is really going to depend how your exercise is going to help you and the different types of exercise that will be beneficial to you. And that's definitely one of the things that I greatly appreciate as far as the DNA company and what they're testing for, because when those levels are known, we can understand, okay, do we need to do HIIT workouts? Does that need to be a little more aggressive, a little more impact? Or do we need to be more on the yoga, calmer, working to get those pieces of the brain coming through? Because it's 100% getting that blood flow increased to encourage brain production. And like you said, the diet, cholesterol is what our brain runs on, healthy cholesterol. A lot of people will get scared of cholesterol. No, that is what we were very falsely educated on for a long time. We love cholesterol. Cholesterol is one of the things that helps prevent Alzheimer's and dementia and things of that nature. So whereas within reason, you want to be healthy, but having a balanced diet and a very protein forward diet. Protein is one of the best fuels for our brain.
Interesting. And how is that? Because like I can make the very natural jump from too much sugar. I see how that dysregulates mood and mind and how the body functions. So talk to me, I guess, a little bit more around protein being such an important fuel for the brain.
So protein is what fuels our body, and it's probably one of the last pure nutrients we're able to get. It's the least genetically altered, even though a lot of what we're getting from our grocery stores does have, I definitely encourage get the no antibiotic nor hormones, things of that nature. But because it is the purest form of nutrients we can get, unfortunately, most vegetables, grains, things of that nature, they've been altered. And we're not able to receive those nutrients like we once did even 15, 20 years ago. So supplements are nice, but protein is what our body can recognize, and it turns that into fuels for our body as far as creating more blood cells, and those reinvigorated blood cells go to our brain and keep us young and healthy.
Yeah. I like that. Thank you. Yeah. Especially I think as there's so much difficult competing information around diet, it's nice to hear that here's one thing amongst others that can be done to that end. And protein's such a good thing too when you think of exercise and supporting the other non-brain outcomes of exercise.
Yes. Well, I don't know if you have, I'm sure you've probably heard of the carnivore diet. Have you heard of it?
Occasionally. Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I did. I like to experiment on myself before I experiment on anyone else. So I decided to adopt that for a month this year just to see what it did. I was curious.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of claims, and I definitely turned kind of a side eye to something that's so popular, kind of the new fad diet. And I will tell you, whereas I don't believe it's a sustainable diet, It is incredible what I notice within my body and brain function after only eating animal products, animal byproducts, which
Yeah.
blew my mind. And this is coming from someone who was raw vegan for 2 years. So it really kind of blew everything out of the water because I'm thinking fruits and vegetables and, seeds and nuts and all these wonderful things
Yeah.
and vegan. Yes.
Yeah.
And then eating that solely, it did help me realize, and again, all this being said, I think eating for your blood type is also important. So that's another factor. I'm O negative. So my body pulls nutrients best from animal products.
Mhm.
That being said, I did realize that after going through that experiment on myself, the added protein that we're just not getting as a society on a daily basis made such a difference, not only in my energy levels, but thinking and calm mood and just overall well-being.
Yeah, yeah. Bryce, I don't know if you have personal experience with the carnivore diet, but one of our in-house clinicians, Dr. Stephanie Nielsen, is a huge advocate of it and has a very similar story insofar as maybe not the most sustainable thing, but as a diet that's very much directed towards I have this problem and I'm seeking to support this, right?
Yeah.
Sees incredible benefit from it. So we're not strangers to that. Bryce, do you ever find yourself prescribing it in clinic?
Look, I do see it as a therapeutic intervention short term. I do believe also it's non-sustainable. And I'm not speaking about environmental. I'm talking about, we are omnivores, and that's been proven time immemorial. That's epidemiological evidence. That's evidence that's anthropological, and the majority of us do probably best on modified, paleo or modified Mediterranean. And I say most of us because once you know your genes, and we study the nutritional profile, then you can get a lot more zoned in on exactly what you need to focus on in terms of macro and micronutrients. And, Allison says something really important. I think as it pertains to, going all in on meat, for example, or all in on anything, one of the things I think is happening is that you're avoiding sugar, right? I think excess sugar intake causes inflammation. I don't think we know it causes inflammation by doing things like spiking insulin and creating harmful cytokine storms and compounds, which affects the brain. And that's sort of the focus tonight. The brain's really highly susceptible to it because the brain relies on blood flow, and inflammation disrupts blood flow. It's almost that simple. So, and then it ends up damaging neurons and impairing cognitive function and inviting things like, an APO3/4 or 4/4 to instigate faster than usual. So, memory and focus start to decline. So, anyways, over time, this leads to issues like, brain fog, neurodegenerative diseases. Anyway, reducing sugar, in my opinion, whatever you end up doing about that, helps keep brain inflammation in check, supporting mental clarity and long-term brain health. So I think doing a carnivore focus, I think maybe a lot of it's more about eliminating some of the evil in the diet versus just the sole focus of increasing protein, although prioritizing protein. And again, while reducing sugar intake benefits brain health for sure. All the essential amino acids are there. And exercise performance by stabilizing blood sugar, reducing inflammation, supporting neurotransmitter production, focus, attention, alertness, concentration. Full circle, protein aids in repair and
Yeah.
fuels physical activity. And again, while BDNF is essential for brain cell growth. So I think it's that whole thing, but I don't think it's sustainable. I've never seen it. I do use it usually, by the way, for Crohn's, colitis, inflammatory bowel disease. I think that's one of the best and most studied indications from a clinical practice perspective.
I wanna shortly move on to the poll because I want to make sure we're addressing our audience, but I'm not sure if the audience, like, I just want to kind of meditate on something that both of you said separately and that I think will become such a theme within this talk is the idea is increasing brain flow and reducing brain inflammation, and how you go about that, be it your diet, be it your exercise, right, is so dependent on your genes and who you are founded as a person, and that the answer for me is going to be different than the answer for Bryce, which will definitely be different than the answer for Alison, right? 3 people, 3 answers. And just like in the crowd, what you're hearing us talk about tonight, you're going to hear us talk a lot about different options, and not all of the options are your options. And so working with a clinician, working with someone you trust in that setting is going to be really helpful to figuring out which of the options are important to you. Yeah. So maybe if the powers that be could toss up on my screen the results of that poll, because I want to make sure we're speaking to whoever is out there. I see some Canadians, so whoever you are, hello, welcome to the Canadians. I'd love to know, it's always curious where people are calling in from. So if we have anyone outside of Canada and the US in particular who's on the chat, we love to see that from you. So the goal today, at least of people participating in our webinar, it is happily split. So hosts, we have a challenge for us. 20% want to learn about exercise for brain health, 30% how genetics will impact aging and cognition, which is a common question we get. 30% discover how general interest, or they have a general interest in brain health and wellness. And then lastly, discover personalized fitness strategies to the end of brain health. So happy mixed bag, and hopefully something, especially through all those options that we run through, everyone here today can leave with something. When asked about, are you familiar with the concept of personalized exercise plans based on genetics? Oh my goodness, Montia, 90% of our audience said they're either somewhat to not at all familiar. So no, and so maybe really dwelling on how hosts this evening, how different genes can feed into how you might want to go about exercising, because I think Alison's already alluded to that. While we might be thinking exercise means we have to be at the gym every day or marathoning every day or something like that, for some people in our audience who have that higher inflammatory capacity, maybe it's something more gentle, like yoga, like Tai Chi. Last question here. Well, how old are you? Beautiful, beautiful spread within the audience, 61 and older, a majority of our audience. Welcome. We have, I don't know, the balance 35% just under that, with most of you tucking into the 45 to 60 range as well. And our last question here, what type of exercise do you currently practice? So 50% of our audience snaps for you guys, strength training. Love it. I'm in this boat. I'm curious, hosts, jump in when you hear the boat that you're in. So 50%, myself included, strength training. The runner up to that would be aerobic or cardio at about 16%. 14%, 12 is sitting with mind body. So that's kind of yoga, Tai Chi, things of that nature. A very honest 12% said none. I'm proud of you. Thank you for your honesty. And then we have another category that said 10%. I'm curious what exercises we didn't catch. So if you're in the other category, please do let us know what it is you do. So why don't we explore personalized exercise a little bit to the end of brain health, but also just kind of introducing this concept of how what your genes say influence how your body might want to be moved and worked, etc.
Yeah. I mean, I'll jump in. I feel like, there's so many genes that we could unpack here, but some that we look at the DNA company are incredibly important to understand, not just to qualify for what type of exercise you should be doing. So like HIIT, high intensity interval training, or endurance cardio, strength training, or even mind body exercises, you against gravity, Pilates, you name it, yoga. But then some genes and pathways that call out for you to do more of a particular thing that is suited for you. I think we talked a little bit about BDNF, unpack that a little more. Obviously, if somebody has a variant of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is kind of like fertilizer to the soil of our brain. So this is neuroplasticity. The brain continues to grow, folks. We are not just static at age 8 and that's it. It continues to make new connections, uncouple, and make new neurons all the time. But if you're not blessed with the most optimal BDNF variant, more than likely, unless there's some other genes we identify, HIIT and aerobic exercise is excellent for you because that ultimately upregulates BDNF in and of itself. getting hotter, saunas, et cetera, do the same thing. Um, I think one that's not so often talked about, ApoE and the variations there. That is just,
Mhm.
you know, the 3-3 is the average population 3-2, and you're lucky. But there's a 4 in there. Probably going to have to think about, so long as other genes like NOS or nitric oxide, you're wanting to think about endurance cardio, right? Aerobic activity. So ApoE variations associated with cardiovascular disease, but also Alzheimer's, cognitive decline. So that kind of exercise boosts oxygenation and blood flow, like aerobic exercises. But of course, we could talk about COMT, ACE, NOS, clock. We can get into a million of these. And
Are there any genes or at least any profiles that you would say are contraindicated towards aerobics? Because I think so many people think like, oh, if I just trained enough, running is good for me, right? Are there any people that we're saying like between long endurance cardio or HIIT that aren't ideal profiles, right? It's a
yeah,
question.
yeah. So, you know, to continue on, I think considering for the ACE gene, I think considering for the NOS or the nitric oxide gene, and again, the variations between those, and then something you know, the superoxide dismutase gene, and frankly, how well you detoxify means that's sort of like the standard package that we typically put together, analyzing all of those. So ACE would be kind of, you know, endurance versus power. Nitric oxide, how well you vasodilate in your peripheries, how quickly you go from 0 to 60 and allow for, you know, adequate or optimal blood flow. You know, superoxide dismutase, how quickly you clean up the mess. Free radical or oxidative stress that would otherwise damage the mitochondria, which pushes out your ATP, and then that's your currency of energy. And then how you take all of the ramifications from exercise and make them water soluble and pee them out and poop them out and breathe them out, right? If you've got suboptimal, you know, across the board, well, you're probably going to want to do some focused groundwork, some Pilates, you know, some, you know, light but steady, slow wins the race, weight bearing activity. However, here's, I think, the bottom line, especially as it like relates back to the brain. Brain needs exercise. I don't care what your genetic variation is. We're meant to push, pull, jump, squat, lift, as Alison, I know, would agree. And then at the same time, keep a, you know, a focused, purposeful attention to our movements. But there's a way in which we can do this that's most optimal to our genetic profile. And, you know, I think I would leave it off and throw it over to Alison to sort of, you know, get more specific on like the mind body side of it. But I think, you know, there's so many genes that we can unpack. The point is that we do want to get personalized when it comes to how we move.
Definitely. I think you can very easily get caught up in being too worried about what to do. And for exercise, where that really comes into play is consistency.
Yeah.
If as long as you're being consistent, you're going to gain the benefits. And if you get the genetic testing done, you get your DNA testing, then that gives you extra tools to be able to dial that in to see, okay, maybe I do have certain variants that would be, you know, if I have a focus on more strength training or more of yoga or things of that nature. But it's also so important because I can't tell you how many times I tell people, go, you know, go try this or go try that. If you don't enjoy it, you're not going to do it.
You know what? You're making such a good point there. And here's how at the DNA company, we're proud of increasing, I think what you're describing is compliance. Because if it's not enjoyable, and we find, for example, that somebody is a null variant with their glutathionization genes, it's not enjoyable because they're doing extremely strenuous activity. And every single time they're done, guess what? They don't experience the runner's high. They don't experience the hit benefit. What they experience is a load of endogenous toxins that build up. Mind you, this is the lesser of the population, but nonetheless, and they just feel very sore. This is like the immediate lactic acid buildup, and they're just like, this sucks. I don't want to do this pain again. But if we zone them in on what is optimal for them, the compliance is easier. That's the magic, I think. But you're absolutely right. You just got to do it, and you feel better because ultimately, what does exercise do? I mean, muscles, they release not just endorphins and happy molecules, But healing molecules, you work out the bicep and it recovers, it's sending out chemokines and cytokines to the brain, which are influencing feel good and better sleep and all that. But you're right. I think continuity, or rather compliance, is key. But when somebody feels like garbage after doing what they just keep pushing themselves to do over and over, you're not going to ever get there, or it's hard.
Exactly.
Do you guys have any tips or tricks? So someone, let's pretend there's someone in the audience, that 10% that we had, that very honest 10% that don't do much exercise, and they're struggling with how do I gain that initial inertia, right? Because the first few times it's not going to be pleasant because your body isn't used to it. And so ultimately at first it may not feel great, but what are your tips and tricks for getting people to kind of commit to and maintain that exercise regime?
I would say it's going to depend on your personality type. If you're somebody that you want to change up your schedule occasionally, go try different types of fitness until you find one that works for you. I'll be honest, I went to the gym and lifted weights, and it was so mind numbing. I just wanted to beat my head against the wall. And honestly, it was very frustrating because I never got any sort of muscle definition. Randomly, I started fighting. I would never have considered myself a boxer or Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu. None of that was even within the realm of possibility in my brain. I started doing that. It took my fitness to a whole nother level, and it's something I never even considered. So, that's really where you get to be detective for yourself. See what works for you. And if you are more of a routine regime individual, find a class that works for time and force yourself to get there. You have to realize that you are your best friend. You have to live with yourself for the rest of your life. So guess what? You might as well be kind to yourself and respect yourself and honor yourself with taking yourself to something. And keep that time of day. If you find the class isn't suiting your needs or is too intense or isn't intense enough, keep that time, keep your routine, but switch it up to something else.
Alison didn't even see that happen, but I was showing my phone up. I'm now following you on Instagram, and I would not want to be behind that Muay Thai kick. Let me tell you, it's daunting. Yeah.
I like the idea that you brought up there, though, Alison, of play, in the sense of you don't necessarily know what you like, and so go be a child and play with different things until you find something that you like. I think, and that by itself is very healthy for the brain, right? Playing different,
learning new skills, and do not be afraid of the Instagram fitness influencers or all the stupid videos that make fun of people that don't know what they're doing. Whatever. Ignore that. You're not stupid. You're trying. That's amazing. You need to throw a party for yourself. If you're stepping outside of your comfort zone, guess what? You are winning. You just won. You won life. Congratulations. Don't let anybody else tell you any otherwise. Call me and I'll remind you, because you get a gold star for that day.
And of course, genetics influence the stress response, right? I mean, it helps to manage stress. If anything's going to eat up excess cortisol, it's first morning movement. I don't care if that's a, quick walk, breathless almost walk, or you're doing some weight bearing. But routine physical activity is key. And Alison, you talk a lot about mental health benefits of establishing an exercise routine, but also importantly for people with stress, right? And trauma. And chronic stress from trauma. I mean, I think that's important for people to hear as well, because I don't know, Dr. Kostroman, I don't think I've seen more than maybe 5% of the population with genes that we otherwise affectionately refer to as, the consummate CEO genes. I mean, the ADRA2B, which accounts for adrenaline, COMT, which is the speed at which you uncouple catecholamines. I mean, most of us have genetic, and I think that's by the way, that's the survivalistic evolutionary component. We are default nervous, stressed beings, because if we're not, you're probably least, in the savannah desert of 100,000 years ago, get eaten by some
Yourself.
beast, right? But Alison, how would you talk to us about, like, managing exercise routines insofar as somebody who's experiencing high amounts of stress, whether it's from trauma or not?
Mm.
So depending on the type of trauma you've had in your life, you're going to carry that trauma in different areas of your body. And it could be shoulder pain, it could be stomach, hips, depending on whatever that trauma is. And that, there's a lot of good books that you could reference to understand, okay, I had this trauma in my life and my elbow hurts. Well, and you wonder, why is my elbow hurting? Well, that might be because that trauma is there that's got to be worked out. And because we carry those, again, it's very much our brain connects with our body. We have areas that we will carry that trauma and it will take over and cause us to feel we are unable to do things that we are, but we have to work through that. And that's where it's important. If you do have serious trauma, I wouldn't suggest working through that on your own. Meet with someone, talk with them, and find that resolution, or work on finding that resolution with that trauma in conjunction with your fitness regimen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The other piece that I did want to bring up from our previous conversation is brain health and liver health are so closely connected. And talking about those sugars, that's really where, aside from all the lovely heavy metals that get put in our liver, all the sugars get cleansed out by our liver. That's why they talk, you need to be careful about your alcohol intake. You need to be careful about your sugars, because when your liver is overloaded, it will definitively affect how your brain is going to function. It does cause depression. It does cause moodiness. It does cause all these things because your liver, and a lot of people don't realize how closely tied those two are. But when you're overloading your liver, you're overloading your brain, and you're going to have to deal with the consequences of that. One of the things that I strongly suggest for helping your liver is chelators. Chelation, there's different places you can go to get IVs for that. They're natural chelators, cilantro. Again, the variants, certain people can't eat cilantro, but I do.
The soapy taste. Sorry.
But again, you can Google that to see what are natural chelators, because that's going to help support your liver and help cleanse out some of the excess whatever's in there that might be weighing you down, and get things functioning, working well again.
And I think that beautifully ties into an area. I know that Bryce is very, very passionate about the idea that brain must be kept clean, which is definitely liver and how liver cleans out blood, but additional and aligned with that is how sleep supports that, how our brain is really clean during sleep. And if you're not sleeping properly or offering body that consistent time to be sleeping, just like with the consistency of exercise, brain will sit in a very dirty bath and brain will decline, right? If we're talking about how clean the liver keeps body clean, right? Sleep is kind of a bit of a liver for just the brain when it comes to cleaning that up. Yeah.
Definitely. And sleep, I could talk to you for the rest of this webinar on sleep. We need sleep so badly. Men need less sleep than women, but honestly, as crazy or wonderful as it is, women need 8 to 10 hours of sleep a night. That is because, and a lot of people, broken sleep, that's a problem too. You might be in bed for 8 hours, but our brains don't actually, so throughout the day, we get these little synapses, pieces in our brain just from function. Our brain is a muscle, it's constantly working, and it gets these little deposits throughout it. While we sleep, that is when our brain cleanses those out. It really is doing its most cleansing at hour 7 and 8. So it's that tail end of our sleep pattern that is where we're getting the most benefit from our rest. So when you're having choppy sleep, your brain's not going to be able to get to that place. And again, to go back to the fitness, staying active, that does give your brain the ability to relax because you don't have all this anxious energy laying around in your body. Your body and your brain are going to be on the same page. Hey, we are exhausted. We will not wake you up at 3 a.m. this morning. But it just kind of it's all a part of the same program. You've got to have the right diet, you've got to have the right exercise, and you've got to have the right sleep. All three are equally important.
Yeah, it's absolute it's the trifecta. And most people, don't realize either that it's not just the hours we clock on the pillow, it's the depth and aptitude of that sleep for recovery. And the technical term, by the way, is glymphatics. I think that's what you were referring to, Dr. Kostroman, yes. Which I'm always on about. But I also just have to unload based on what Alison just said. And, the sugar toxin connection. I mean, look, here's what I wanted to get to before glymphatics. I'll be as fast as I can. And we all know Bryce is never fast, but nonetheless, I'll be as fast as I can. Alzheimer's is now more than ever often referred to as type 3 diabetes. And it's because it's linked to insulin resistance in the brain, which affects glucose metabolism, which is crucial for brain cells. Like we need glucose or ketones to think. But when the brain becomes less responsive to insulin, it struggles to process glucose, which leads to inflammation, which leads to plaque buildup, which leads to cognitive decline. I mean, it's pretty simple. And actually, there's an amazing book that people should know about. It's Dr. Dale Bredesen's The End of Alzheimer's. And I think that everyone should read. I think this guy's going to win a Nobel Peace Prize one day for his work because he subclassifies Alzheimer's. One of them, of course, is glycotoxic type 3 diabetes. And there's also the toxin version, heavy metals that Alison was alluding to. And of course, there's the cold or, vasoconstrictive poor blood flow and all these other things that we look at the DNA company for the pinning, the backbone of genetic susceptibility. And his message, by the way, is you can't change your genes, but you can modify genetic expression, just what we talk about all the time. But exercise helps to counteract these effects by improving insulin sensitivity throughout the body, including the brain. And physical activity boosts blood flow, promotes glucose uptake. Insulin's like the doorman to a hotel where people are trying to get in, opens the door, falls asleep. No one's getting in, they get mad and they create inflammation outside the cell. So it reduces that inflammation, releases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which supports neural health. Regular exercise is, and again, I know, and I love this trifecta as well. And I think it is diet, and I think it is sleep, and I think it is exercise. But I'll tell you, I can argue this all day long. I think exercise, if you were to choose of importance, select one of those things, I have to think exercise actually outweighs and trumps those two other things. So anyways, full circle to sleep, lymphatics, if we're not practicing optimal sleep hygiene, some of us need to do it better than others. With the clock gene that we look at, the DNA company, the 5-HTTL-PR gene variation, which is that which controls serotonergic upregulation, TPH2, tryptophan hydroxylase, which helps to promote or create or produce serotonin. A lot of these other genes regulate sleep-wake cycles. But our brains don't have lymph, right? When we exercise and move our muscles, we're actually squeezing the lymph and we're moving toxins. Brain doesn't have that. It has glymphatics or glial cells that act to kind of move around and clean up the mess. And if we don't get the deep sleep architecture and consideration, stage 3 and 4, most people think REM or dreaming is the deepest. That's the lightest. But if we're not deep in in stage 3 or 4 for the amount of time that we need, the average person needs about an hour and a half of that every night. We're not clearing out. We're not detoxifying our brain. And by the way, this is a little tip, and I'll leave off at this for now. Sleeping on your side, science proves that is better for lymphatic drainage than on your back. And so if you're a snorer or you're sleeping on your back or both of those things, worst possible combination for brain toxicity buildup at night.
Interesting. I'm still hung up on you of the three, trying to pick a Muay Thai fight right now and saying exercise is most important. Alison, where do you sit on that? Diet, exercise, sleep.
I believe sleep is the most important. I have to be honest. And I'll tell you why. Without sleep, you don't have the energy or capacity to do anything else. You're not going to eat healthy if you're tired, because you're looking for anything to fuel you because your mind is just sluggish. And we all know we've had those days where we didn't get great sleep. We stayed up too late. We got up too early. Who knows? And we eat crap food because it makes us feel better. And then we're certainly not going to go exercise if we're tired. And if we do, personally, I feel it can be more detrimental exercising exhausted than not exercising at all. So with that sleep, with proper sleep, even if you're not, and I think it's important for everyone to recognize, fitness, exercise doesn't have to be going to a gym. It doesn't have to be going to a class. If you are getting up and staying active, if you want to, I'm not a huge fan of Apple Watches because I like less technology. I think we've got way too many electronic things happening all around us. I'm also not a fan of AirPods. So sorry to bust that. I think everything needs to be corded. And you put your phone down. All that being, walk everywhere. Walk up stairs. Park in the farthest spot from your grocery store to get to the grocery store. There's little things you can do in your daily life that's going to increase your activity level that will equate to going for an hour walk. But you're just going to be doing it in your daily life, and if you feel you don't have time to do it, well, that's fine. Develop it into what you're already doing. It's really simple. I mean, it will take a little effort, but once you start doing that, once you stop using the elevator, once you stop parking in the closest spot to the grocery store possible, you're going to see a change. You're going to notice a difference.
Yeah, I think you referenced there, and Bryce, hold me honest, you might know the more up-to-date research on this. The idea, as we shift away from smoking being this big, huge public health scare and more into other things, sedentary lifestyle, namely doing nothing but sitting in front of a desk, we're learning that that's just as bad for health outcomes as smoking, right? Maybe not just as bad, but close to it. And there was some research that looked at if you have a desk job, if you can't get away from kind of this stationary static life of 8 hours a day in front of a computer, what can you do to balance it? And research is saying, it's about an hour worth of walking. And so I think Alison brings up a really good point here that if, you don't have a life that necessarily affords you an hour at the end of the day to walk about, finding ways to infuse that activity into your day so that that 1 hour is just naturally part of your day. So it's not something you're thinking about. It's something that's already infused into and part of the enjoyment. I saw some other research, and this is also interesting for our desk users out there. One thing to help balance being static is doing squats every, 45, 60 minutes, something to that effect. So quite literally breaking up the monotony of that 8 hours with, is it 10? Hold me honest, 10 squats, just kind of standing up from your desk and doing that. And so it's not a huge expenditure. It's simply just moving that blood, right? Moving the blood, allowing the brain, allowing the liver to move things a bit more, allowing the brain to be cleaned out a little bit more.
So here's what,
yes,
here's what you're, and I'll summarize what you're saying because it's all true. So what we're saying is frailty trumps cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and even cancer combined. It is the number one all-cause mortality factor. And what is frailty? And you could argue it's a bunch of things, but I'd say primarily it's, well, sitting at a desk, sarcopenic obesity, loss of muscle mass over time, leading to frailty, leading to the potential for a fall, and then therefore leading to hospitalization, leading to death from infection through hospitalization. There's so many different paths, to the grave. But nonetheless, I think I think what I was saying earlier, just, and I'll underscore it and try to make my position clear, is that exercise trumps even sleep and nutrition just barely, because the benefits of maintaining muscle mass and strength can be, I think, so significant for longevity and even health span that it
Mm.
may outweigh certain traditional health risks. For example, smoking or hypertension or sitting at a desk. So, in my view, high levels of muscle mass and physical fitness, even if that only is an hour or two a day, can drastically reduce overall mortality, all cause risk of falls and fractures at later age, because muscle supports metabolic health. It reduces inflammation. This doesn't mean you can eat fries and burgers and drink scotch for lunch. I'm just saying, preserves mobility and independence. Yeah. So I think it's critical for aging well. You guys know what this is?
Oh, is that a grip strength?
Yeah, dynamometer, right? One of the best ways to actually test for longevity is how hard you can squeeze a dynamometer. We all, age, gender, height, weight, should be able to squeeze it, to a certain degree. I mean, one of the simplest tests for, how well we're aging brain muscle mass is to be able to carry dumbbells, kettlebells. I think for the average female, 75 pounds for 1 minute. For a guy, average height weight, it's 100 pounds for 1 minute. But what I'm suggesting is that the positive effects of muscle and strength on long-term health outcomes can actually be more impactful than the risks posed by certain negative lifestyle factors, like a little bit less sleep than you did. I'm not talking about sleeplessness. I mean, a little bit less sleep than you otherwise should get, or maybe, kind of cheating with your diet occasionally. So that's what I'm saying. But I agree with you guys. I think sleep and diet is just up. It's still the triad when it comes to brain health. But I think this underscores the extraordinary value of exercise in improving overall health outcomes and avoiding frailty, which is the biggest killer of all.
Mhm.
All right. I think at this point in time, possibly we shift into some questions and answers, because audience has popped a few into the box. Let's see. I'm not going to go in any particular order, but maybe Alison, as I read through some of the other questions so I can offer them a bit more strategically. Kathy is asking if you could repeat the name of the book that you mentioned, book and author. I don't know if you remember that. Kathy, you might need to be a little bit more specific.
I mentioned one book, and it was
Possibly.
The End of Alzheimer's by Dr. Dale
Thank
Bredesen.
you. Thank you.
And
Yes.
it's all E's, by the way. It's Bredesen. It's Dale, and then Bredesen. Particularly helpful for individuals out there with the ApoE34444 variants, with glutathionization, null variants, superoxide dismutase, poor, all the whole thing that we kind of package up together and say, hey, you really got to pay even more attention early on to your brain, and your attempts to avoid cognitive decline. Because, by the way, I want to mention, these are not diagnostics. They are not, they're not fatalistic, insofar as you're going to have Alzheimer's. What these genes mean, the way that we look at them anyway, is that they are flags. What's really interesting evolutionarily is the ApoE34 and 44 used to be favored, right? We didn't live that long. I mean, only 400 years ago did we even live older than 45. So if you got stabbed in your foot in the Savannah Desert 20, 30,000 years ago, and there was an infectious agent there, you wanted the 3-4 or the 4-4. Because the immune system is involved. It's not just cholesterol carrying. It doesn't just mean risk for Alzheimer's. It's how quickly your immune system engages for infectious agents and protects the brain against them. But now we live into older age, and so the 3-4-4-4, immune system gets out of hand a little bit in older age, and plaque deposits, Alzheimer's, that kind of stuff. So that's way oversimplified. But anyway.
I like that context. I think it's very powerful, because oftentimes people will come and they're like, I have these genes, everything's horrible. And you're like, no, it's just different than what you were expecting, and you have other strengths. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Berta has a question for us, and it echoes back a little bit to the protein conversation that we had, and, really looking to increase protein and amino acids. She's asking if green pea protein is a good source of protein. I definitely have an opinion on this. And does anyone else like to offer their opinion?
Oh, why don't you
No.
why don't you share it? We all want to know.
Well, so when we think of protein, again, really, especially from a human perspective, we're asking the question of how are we getting our amino acids? Protein is this happy little family of amino acids, 13, 12 of which we can only get through our food. And when we think about those amino acids, they build up the body. They support different neurotransmitters, different hormones, different, muscles, all that fun stuff. And so we need a happy spread of all of them. When we look at proteins like pea protein, outside of kind of, some people might be more sensitive to it based on lentils, legumes, peanut family, right? Outside of that, even if we just look at the collection of amino acids within pea protein, it's not complete, and it's very skewed towards having a lot of some and very few of others. So when we look at, by and large, you want to look at getting your protein from real food, because it comes with other things than just protein. That said, if you do need to support yourself with protein drinks, we're all busy. I get it, not judging that. I do it too, right? We want to look at a protein source that has that really happy blanketing of all the amino acids. Okay. And so,
There.
I'd like
Sorry.
to,
Yeah.
but okay, I'm just gonna follow that up. As far as protein supplements of that nature, oh, the FDA actually allows this, and it's something that's very important for if you are supplementing your protein with either protein bars or protein powder, anything of that nature. When you get that protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, the FDA actually allows a certain amount of sugars to be considered protein. So you are really just eating a candy bar. It is, yes, it is obnoxious that that's allowed to happen, but it is true, and it is something you need to be very aware of. If you're gonna get a protein bar, go get a meat stick. Get some beef jerky. I don't,
Nothing
because
better than a piece of real meat or a can of, tuna. I mean, some of us have to worry about source and heavy metals, but then processed. Because a protein bar is still processed for sure. I
yeah,
agree. There's way too much
absolutely.
other junk in most of them out there. But what I was going to follow up with was, especially for vegans, vegetarians, I think pea protein, although I can't stand the taste of most of them. I think it's a reasonable choice. Your point, though, Dr. Kosterman, I think, even as some of the branch chains are in there, I think it's not complete. And that's really the point. But for a vegan vegetarian, or even somebody with sensitivities to dairy or soy, or even somebody who just wants what they think is maybe the more sustainable option. I'm not even sure. I probably can argue that. But and to get the full amino acid profile, you might just mix it with other plant proteins. I'm not saying it's going to be 100% complete in some, but if you put it with rice or, hemp, you include a different variety of these plant proteins, you can get pretty darn close to having all of the essential amino acids. I think it's just about opting for reputable brands that test for quality, purity, potency, transparency, traceability,
Yeah.
and organic if possible,
I don't mean to dump on the plant-based out there. For the audience that knows me, I was plant-based for about 25 years. And so it's not to the end of disliking the diet. It's being smart about the diet. And I think Bryce offers the perfect point. If you're going to be doing plant proteins, ensuring a variety. And I've seen really beautiful blends of extracts from hemp and rice and a lot of sprouted proteins kind of all shoved into one, so that, again, it's not one plant, it's several, and you're getting a mix of grains as well as lentils in that. Because for the plant heads out there, we know that to get your complete protein, you're mixing a lentil/legume with a grain to get that full spectrum. So your protein powders need to mirror that as well. Be that you make it yourself, or there's a few companies that are doing that already and don't have the pea protein, which for many people plainly is a very I find inflammatory plant-based protein for them. Yeah. All right. We can move on to another question. Colleen here is asking, so her genetics indicate that she should mainly do strength training, not cardio. And she's saying she does the opposite. She does 4 cardios a week and 2 strength training workouts. How do you how should she, or how can she transition into the genetic recommendations? I also have opinions, but I'd love to offer it out to the Alisons and the Bryces of the world, their thoughts here too. I feel like Alison's thoughts might mirror mine as well as Bryce's, because we're all kind of laughing. But let's hear it, team.
It's get a piece of paper and a pencil so you can write this down. Stop cardio. It's really, if you really enjoy cardio, I get it. Again, there are strength training options that incorporate some cardio in them. I would, not to push you into fighting, but boxing, Muay Thai, certain fighting arts are very much strength training, but incorporate a lot of cardio. So if you truly love that aspect, I strongly suggest finding a strength training option that's going to promote some cardio within it. So you're going to get that nice balance. But outside of that, yeah, you could probably cut out all the cardio completely and have those extra 4 hours of your week to do whatever you want. Then just keep to add 1 more strength training.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say that it depends on how she came to that conclusion. And we have such incredible clinicians at the DNA company that offer up such precise, personalized programs. So that how the path to that conclusion is important to understand. So I'll just paint a quick picture. You know, if, for example, SOD2 runs amok, maybe some issues with detoxification, maybe we talked about these a little bit earlier. ACE, NOS are slightly suboptimal. There's other way. Look, I think we're remiss a little bit to not have opened up the executive function, mood, and behavior. I'm one of them that's guilty to like desire such high levels of intensity for the dopamine, for the catecholamine endorphin release. And there's the runner's high factor. So some people just do it for that. And it may not be good for their physical body due to their genetic susceptibility, but it's amazing for the mind. And so I would never want to take that away from anybody, but to shift toward a strength focused routine that aligned with your genetics, I think to start first, just as Alison described, gradually reducing, or even just stopping, but gradually reducing, but then adding that extra strength day. And then the other thing is replacing, like steady state cardio with something smarter, like Alison's, boxing or Muay Thai, or shorter hit sessions. So, focus on compound exercises, and vary your training with a mix of like heavy, moderate weights, and just switch it up. But here's what I was going to get to. Guess what? Saunas, especially for those with low to suboptimal BDNF, saunas emulate cardio. So getting super hot and bothered in a sauna, to discomfort, heart rate's going up. And again, this is sort of, you have to qualify it with your genes and your clinician, et cetera. But that will emulate the sweat and the experience to some degree. Even the science is saying the cardiovascular benefits are nearly equal to intensive cardiovascular work. So anyway, so gradual approach balances the, fitness goals with your genetic recommendations, but there's always alternatives, is I guess what my point was.
Yeah, I think that's a really wise and good point. I've seen clinically people, like, for example, they want to be plant-based and yet their genes say probably not the greatest idea. Or, and I'm thinking of one person in particular, he came to me and he was a major marathon runner and his genes kind of said this isn't great for you. You can still do it if you want, but you're going to have to put a lot of extra work in, and you want that extra work to be intelligent. So for the plant-based folk, it's proper supplementation and a few other things. For those that are exercisers and want that, even though their genes say maybe not the greatest idea, it's a lot of after exercise care and antioxidant care. And a few things that Bryce had mentioned are very specific to how you clean that up, and then how do you support your arteries and veins after the fact. So anything is possible if you're willing to put the intelligent work into it. But if it's against your genes, you really want to be partnered with someone wise and with someone who understands all parts of it. Yeah, I think that's important there. Okay.
Absolutely.
So I have another question for us, I think, before we start closing things up. Jennifer here, and this is a little bit off topic, but I still like it because it dovetails into a lot of the detox and kind of more the general body maintenance that we know is good for brain. So Jennifer is saying that she's looked at our TNA reports, and within them they're suggesting folinic acid. So she probably has a need within her SHMT1 or her MTHFR to be supported in such a way. So folinic acid B9, it's not a methylated form of those. So we know that DNA panel looks very specifically targetly into methylation pathways. We know not all B vitamins are created equal. And she is saying she's really struggling to find that in specific supplements, because right now the industry sexy standard is methylated Bs in absolutely everything, and that's not appropriate for everyone. So she's asking if there's anywhere that we can do this. So Jennifer, usually maybe if you pop your email and I can suggest a few places that you can go to. I know that our methylation optimizer will be coming out with this with the folinic acid within it, so you can get it from us. And separately, there are a few other companies that offer quality supplements that you can be doing that just to support yourself if that's where your clinician is directing you. Yeah. Any other thoughts or comments from the panel there before we move on to the next question? Because I think, Bryce, there's a follow-up question for you. Oh, perfect. If the moderators can grab her email address for me, please. So Bryce, Debbie is asking, and talking about saunas, do you have a preference between infrared and the traditional type?
So this is a personal choice because I use an infrared sauna. It's easy to put into your home. It's easy maintenance. You can get it pretty hot. I love all different saunas, dry, steam. In fact, probably steam's my favorite, but to have it in your home is high maintenance. For those of anyone out there who doesn't like high ambient temperature, you wave your hand and burn it. One of those. The infrared sauna is for you, and it will make you sweat. So anyone with poor detoxification, I'd say, and that are sensitive, infrared all the way. But look for a very clean infrared sauna. Like most people that want this for detoxification, they have to remember to avoid high EMF. A lot of them put out a lot of that, glues and stuff to keep the boards together. So, there's a few that we really like and kind of partner with, Sauna Ray at the DNA company, and then Sunlighten. Those are a couple that I know, and we can probably get you some information. Here's what's interesting, I think, so as it ties sort of to what we're talking about in general here, northern populations, like Scandinavians, they maintain the most incredible level of happiness through regular sauna use. They've been ranked the happiest people on the planet, and yet guess what? They live so far north of 40, right? They don't get the vitamin D, and they don't necessarily walk. They do some outdoor exercise, and they have really strong social connections. But saunas, which they have per capita, 1.5 saunas per person, more saunas than they have cars or cell phones. But so what we know is that the traditional steam saunas are really where the science comes from. They release endorphins, they reduce stress, they boost circulation, they provide all kinds of really, enhanced physical resilience. That's the other thing. Spending time in extreme heat will boost the BDNF factor, raise dopamine, serotonin, improve sleep, obviously, as you guys can appreciate. So those are all the reasons I'd say get any sauna you can afford. And like, it comes back to Alison's earlier point, compliance. Like, it's not really what is your favorite. It's what can you afford have in your home and do every day. That's I think where you're going to get the most benefit.
I would also offer, right, when you think of Scandinavian saunas and there being so many, not most of them, maybe some of them, but most of them are not necessarily personal use saunas. A lot of them are community saunas.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important factor for brain health, right? Something that we've been very neglectful here. This idea of, sure, do things that are good for your brain. You need to exercise, you need to eat well, you need to sauna, but doing that within community, because I think that helps compliance, and very separately, that's just community is a really good juice for the brain and offers a reason to want to keep your brain happy and healthy, right? When you're connected with other people.
So the Scandinavians, Norwegians, and all those guys in that side of the planet or the pond, when I mentioned 1.5, so that's over one per household. They've got the personal sauna and they've got the communal sauna. So that's to that end, reinforcing community bonds, right? Combating seasonal isolation. That obviously that's going to work to help sustain that sense of well-being, despite the really challenging, cold, gross, dark climate, right? And by the way, they generally have low BDNF activity. So it's almost like they intuitively seek this out. It's very interesting literature.
Oh, it's such a litmus test. If the audience today, if you want to know and you don't know your BDNF gene, jump into a sauna and let me know how you feel. Yeah. All right. Oh, one last question, I think, before we start transitioning out. Bryce, or Alison, I'm not sure if you know this. Kathy's asking, is a super hot bath as effective as a sauna?
Well,
Good
I'd just say
start.
I'd just say no, it's not,
Yeah.
because it can't raise your temperature that high, but you'd be scalding yourself, and that's kind of dangerous, obviously. But it will boost BDNF from what I understand, and going hot and cold might even do it even more.
Yeah, it depends on how hot you go. I know some people can like get their heart rate up and sweat a little bit in those, but it's not the same experience as a sauna.
Right.
But if it's what
Yeah.
you don't sacrifice the good for the perfect. So if that's what you have access to on a certain day, jump in your bathtub.
Mhm.
I want to make sure the audience is aware that Miss Alison here is she's going to be supporting us with future webinars. She's going to be doing a lot of master classes with us. And so if you want to be in touch with her, if you want to start with work with her, she also has a code with us, and you can get a discounted DNA 360 kit through us, through her. So I'm going to ask the powers that be if you want to toss that into the chat. Oh, I think it's already there. You might as well get some benefit from being on the call tonight insofar as discounts. Saving money is always a benefit. Just put that money elsewhere. Guys, any closing thoughts? It was such a delightful webinar to do with you, in particular, exploring the more human side of diet and sleep and exercise, and how do we bring that into our very busy lives? Any closing pearls or thoughts before we bid you all adieu?
Yeah. It was an honor to be a part of everything, and what a great conversation. Learned, and meeting of the minds. I loved it. It was wonderful.
No, thank you. Bryce, any closing pearls before we offer off?
Get yourself a dynamometer.
I
I don't know. I
learned
like
the same thing.
I like to I like to have baselines. Like, where are you at and where can you challenge yourself to get? And I guess it's coming back to the trifecta for me. Exercise, diet, sleep, even the mindful practices that Alison's all about. These are the tools that will support brain health and longevity. So, and understanding how our bodies work individually, personally. This is our instruction manual. That's the DNA 360. If you haven't yet got that, so through insights from our genetics allows us to make more informed decisions tailored to our unique needs, right? So as we've all seen, small adjustments, consistent, like Alison was saying, prioritizing things like strength training and the right nutrients, both macro and micro, that's how we're going to get better, faster, stronger, with more focus, attention, alertness, and better sleep. That's how I'll end off.
I love it. I love it. And I'm proud of us for not getting into a fight over the which is more important between exercise, sleep, and diet. I think, Bryce, you made a compelling case, though. I don't know if I would have ever put exercise top of that, but I appreciate that functionality. But I'm proud of us for not fighting today. Good job, team.
Next time.
In the event that there's a
Promise,
fight,
promise.
my money's on Allison. I'm just saying, that's all I'm saying.
Did you see the stuff I pulled up? I'm following her on Instagram now. Did you see this Muay Thai stuff? I would not want to be in front of her.
Dude, I'm telling you, she can kick your ass.
I know she
And
can.
you're a big guy. She could mess your shit up.
Six
I'm the pacifist that would
feet,
try and keep them apart. Like, stop. No.
6 feet, 205 pounds, but I would not get in front of the kick. That's for sure.
No, you would not.
Well, I'm 6 feet, not 205
Really?
pounds, though.
Yeah,
I'm
she's
6
tall.
foot.
Okay. Well, I'm definitely not getting in front of the kick. That's
I'd put her up against the Kelsey brother. That's all I'm gonna say. All right, you guys, great job, everybody. Allison, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Oh,
Thanks so
thank you
much,
so
guys.
much for including me. This was lovely.
Thank
Team,
you.
great job.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good
Thanks, everyone. Good
Have a
night.
great night.
Good night. Thank you.